welcome to another edition of the Agile Uprising podcast. Once again, I'm Andy Cleff, and today I'm excited to welcome, for the very first time, Dr. Steve Martin. Good to see your face.
Oh my gosh, Andy, it's been ages. It's been such a pleasure to always work with you in the past, and was excited to have you reach out again. So thank you so much for having me here.
It's been a few years since we walked along the same trail in Austin in Agile Velocity days. And I can't believe here we are, turning the calendar one more month, one more year. It's the beginning of 2025. Wow.
Oh, yeah, it's just so amazing, especially with all the COVID and how time slowed down. But I think we hit a space-time continuum or something. The last 2 years have just flown by. So much change, so much going on.
Yeah,
It's been like a roller coaster.
it is 2025. Wow, hard to believe.
Uh-huh.
Well, thanks for joining us. I'll give you the speaker bio listening audience about Dr. Steve Martin. If you haven't met him and spent any time, I encourage you to do so. We'll obviously have contact information in the show notes, and you'll get a chance to learn about Steve and his fascinating perspectives to organizational transformation. You've had a unique journey, Steve, from early days as a Disney cast member
hmm
to your current role as a founder of Agility Guides. And your goal, like many of our listeners and other guests, help leaders, teams navigate change effectively. Status quo is okay for a little while, but it kind of gets boring. And that's where Steve really comes in as an accomplished trail guide, consultant, trainer, coach, pick whatever title you want. With over 25 years of experience, organizations of all size, you definitely look young for, whatever age you're at, Steve. We won't.
Oh, I appreciate the kind words. It's the lighting. It's the
It's the
lighting.
lighting in this facility.
Especially in audio. It's the lighting.
You've worked with Fortune 100, some startups. You've worked at the C-level, their leadership teams. You've done small and wide scale change initiatives. Also, you do a little bit teaching. You're an adjunct professor at Franklin's University of Doctor of Business Administration program. That is a lot of words. Maybe we can dive into that. You serve on a couple of nonprofit professional boards. You want to give either of them a shout out?
Yeah, and so I have to say I was really lucky to get involved with some excellent folks at the Project Management Institute, PMI. Started off in the Rhode Island chapter and then made my way up the East Coast and got on the board and was eventually elected into the president role at the Boston chapter, PMI Mass Bay. Was there for quite a few years. And then when I made the transition down into the Austin, Texas area, I was kind of tapped on the shoulder for Keep Austin Agile, which got me into Agile Austin and eventually elected to that board as their COO and had the opportunity to work again with some really amazing folks, just totally passionate about helping others and just putting a lot of stuff out there to enable excellence out there. So it's been really, really lucky with some boards that I've had the joy and the pleasure to work with.
And I'm sure they're lucky to have had you. So you've just released a new book. It's got a rather attention-grabbing title. We can say this without bleeps on the podcast because our listeners know us quite well that this is not always something you share with the kids in the car. But the title is Bad Shit Managers Do and How to Lead Instead. Today, let's explore a few of the many ideas in the book. We'll talk about the difference between managing and leading, the impact of the environment, whether you're an individual contributor, a team, or a manager, and the impact that the system has on your behavior and performance. Obviously, we'll be talking a little bit about trust and safety. What else? Empowerment, accountability, ownership, and if we have time, maybe this will be another follow-up, but how you nurture learning organizations. This idea that continuous improvement is what makes a difference. But first, Steve, I happen to know you are an avid runner and you balance your love of donuts and baked goods by training for and completing marathons. Let's figure out if we can weave that into today's chat.
Absolutely.
And I'm curious, so both as a runner and as a leader, what are some surprising or the most surprising lesson that crosses those two worlds for you?
Well, I think one of those things that really surprises folks is that people see a manager or a leader or somebody who does like these distance types of sports, which I know you do as well, as, oh, this is an individual. And look at what this individual runner is doing, or what this, manager or what this individual leader is doing. I think people don't see that it really does take a village. It really
Hmm.
does take teamwork in order to make all of this happen. And so I think the surprising thing is that the support and your environment, your surroundings, everything that goes into it, it's really that teamwork aspect that makes a really good runner. You have a community of folks that you train with. When you are out on the course, you find people who are pacing with you. You find where you've got friendly competition that is out there. You find a lot of different folks that you can have interesting conversations with. I've had some really wonderful, memorable moments out on the marathon route. One of my favorite marathons to run is, I know this is going to be a shocker or surprise to folks who know me, is I love running the Disney Marathon in January, which is coming up next weekend. And I remember it was a particularly hot day. It was by the time we got to mile 22, 23, as we're kind of rounding the final corners, it was almost 80 degrees. And
Mm.
running 3-ish, 4-ish hours, and you're coming around that final corner and you're just getting hit with that heat. What they do in the Disney races is, instead of pumping, the Disney music in the parks as you go through it, they pump, pop songs, things like that to keep you moving. Well, I remember turning the corner, and of all songs that popped up, it was Beyonce Single Ladies. And just popped around a corner. I heard the song start, the whoa, 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 whoa. And I just looked at this woman next to me, and she looked at me, and we just started to smile. We stopped. We looked around, we made sure it was safe, but we started to do the single ladies dance together for like 10 seconds, of the chorus. And we just started laughing and like, okay, when you hit the wall, and you will, as a runner, as a manager, as a leader, you will hit the wall. You have to have those people around you. Sometimes it's those trusted people around you. And in this case, it was just a perfect random stranger. And I loved that moment. It is always stuck with me. I'm just like, oh, okay, that's why we do these things. And so that was one of those surprising things that's out there.
I love that story. And I'll tease on it. It wasn't 100% random stranger. Something had brought you together uh, at that curve.
Yeah, we needed each other.
Awesome. Well, before we dive into some of the nitty gritty of your book, let's get on the same cadence, the same pace as you were when we talk about managers versus leaders. So maybe we start with managers, that first part of your book title, Bad Shit Managers Do. What comes to mind for me is it's a rectangle on an org chart, but there's probably different flavors of managers, particularly in the course that you and I have been running in the last couple of years, where
Mhm.
it's the world of agile in software. So we have seen recently an emergence of product managers, project managers, other things with the title. What's the difference whether you're managing people or things, or maybe there isn't?
Yeah, and if I may, I will get to that in just a second, but I think I need to do just a slight explanation of the title that the bad shit managers do, how to lead instead. Is, I think people, again, people who know me, I love the concept of, and this is such a bougie thing to say, classy sarcasm. And so the whole reason I picked this title is, this is actually a story of me and the things that I did as a first-time manager, things I did so bad, so poorly, and I'm a self-proclaimed just I was just really bad as a first-time manager. I wish I had that clue phone, ring ring, pick up the clue phone. I did not. I put it on mute. I put the phone away. I didn't listen to it. I made every mistake not once, but probably twice in a pretty spectacular fashion after I, went back and looked at things. And what I'm seeing today is with a lot of the next generation coming through into these management and quote leadership roles, I'm like, oh, boo, I see you. I've been there.
I recognize
I
that.
recognize that behavior. Please do not do what I did. And so my hope and the wish with this whole book is to really make clear or transparent some of this. It's just common missteps. You don't know what you don't know. And when people become a manager for the first time and they see their name in that box, whether it's a project manager, people manager, product manager, whatever manager title that you have in there, there's a preconceived notion that, ooh, I'm the boss. I'm going to tell people what to do. And Andy, I know this is my favorite expression. Bless your heart.
You might have to explain it for the listeners who are north of the Mason-Dixon line.
Oh, what I have found, Andy, is over the last 4 or 5 years doing a lot of international training is whether you say, oh, bless your heart, or like they do in Europe, oh, bless your soul. I think people know. People
I get it.
know. But it's all in their tone. It's all in your tone and
There we go.
how you say it. And I'm seeing a lot of folks making these mistakes, and I just like I'd like for you to make your own fresh new mistakes. These are ones that are there. But I see people that get into these positions that they start to tell and direct, and I need you to do this, and really be that very directive force and not recognize that in most cases, people who are on these teams are professionals. They may have been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
They kind of know what they need to do. So for me, management, when I say management manager, my sense is this is what you need to do. Okay, we're focused on the what. We need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this. That in and itself is not bad, but it's kind of like a bell curve. Once we gone past the other side and telling people what to do and being micromanagey and following up every 15, 20 minutes, that is when we've gone past the curve. And that's when management becomes toxic. And so, yes, there are some core management things that we need to do, but you're never going to get to a high performing team or really get the most out of individuals unless you look at the other part of the equation that I know that we're going to get to is in that leadership. And the way I like to explain leadership is in the how we get things done. How do we work together? What are the things that we need to do to set up that psychological safety? How can I help you do whatever it is that you need to do? How do you know it's safe to ask me as a leader or as your manager that, hey, I really just need some help in this area just to kind of get me going? And so for me, what I talk about in the first chapter of the book is what I'm going to call the modern manager mindset, which is there is a recognition that you need some management things. I mean, you're in a business, you're in an organization, whether it's for profit, nonprofit, startup, up to the fortune, whatever. You still have a mission, a goal, something that you need to accomplish. So management in and of itself is not, the evil incarnate bad, but you want just enough, just enough. And I love the expression. The first time I heard it was from Jeff Sutherland when I had a chance to work with him for a couple of years in Cambridge. He called it the minimum viable bureaucracy. I just love that
Yes.
phrase. You want just enough to kind of make sure that this is the direction we're going. This is why we need to do it. This is the outcomes we're looking for. This is how we're going to do these types of little things and stuff like that. You need a little bit of that. But to get to really that true high performing, you need to have that leadership mindset. It's about the environment.
I love that expression of MVB. So often you and I have walked into organizations where there are layers and layers of organizational bureaucratic debt. And you're like, why do we have that? I don't know. Something happened 10 years ago. You know,
Yes.
Andy pushed the button, and shit broke. So we have all these layers of change control instead of making things less brittle.
Yes.
So I'm curious, that's a good distinction between management and leadership. I want to tug a little bit on formal and informal leadership, particularly in minimum viable bureaucracies. Can you be a leader without being a manager? Can you be a manager without being a leader? Well, yes, you've already answered that last one. But let's talk about leadership as a function of that a team member plays. And maybe it trades off in the
Mhm.
course of a particular race. Somebody's
Mhm.
setting the pace and then they fall back. Somebody's, you know, clearing the road and then they sit back. So let's
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, when I used to do a lot of distance bicycle riding, we call that the pole position. Who's going to be in the front for the next mile or two to get us through whatever it is that we're going through, whether you're going uphill, whether you're going through rough terrain, whatever. Whoever is in that front spot is really setting the pace for everybody. And if you're in the second, third, fourth, fifth position behind that person who's ever in that pole position leading the pack, there tends to be less resistance through the wind, the element. There's a little bit of pack protection that's going on there. But again, whenever you're running in a group or in a bicycle group, you're always communicating with each other. Lots of hand signals, look out left, look out right. You've got people towards the back of the pack who are calling up things that are coming up behind you. Many times we're out on the physical road where there's cars and other things, car back, car left, car right, things sneaking up on you that somebody in the pole position you can't see. Well, that's going to be very similar to what we find out there in business.
Mm.
You need to have that out there in business as well. And unfortunately, I did not learn that until I was a really good individual contributor that had nowhere to go on the org chart and got promoted when I should not have been promoted up into a management role. And I had about 12 people reporting to me after a couple of years of just being really, just really bad. And we had a reorg. And the new person that came in, it said, Steve, bless your heart. This is not for you. And, quote, in my view, took it away. And in my view, quote, got demoted to being individual contributor. It wasn't until I took that step back and I realized, oh, here, wait a second. You don't need to have formal authority, a formal title in order to be considered a leader. And leadership is not just, hi, I'm the leader. You need to do what I say. I'm like, no, 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 no. There's an element of leading, there's an element of following. And especially what we're seeing with a lot of the agile environments, I'm going to take it a little bit step forward into more agility. It's the recognition that we don't have to be a leader, we don't have to be in the pole position all the time. We want to put the right person in the right position with the right support system in that pole position for a reasonable amount of time and recognize that that takes a lot of effort. That just takes a lot of brain cycles, physical power, mental stamina in order to really do that. You're going to lead to whatever that next goal is. And it doesn't have to be the entire thing. It's just, okay, what's that next increment? What's that next chunk that we need to get through? And when we get through that, all right, let's reevaluate. All right, now where are we at? Who would be the best person in this situation? Sometimes it's for 2 or 3 minutes. Sometimes it's for 2 or 3 months. And so it's having the recognition that as a leader, it's okay to step back.
And sometimes it's probably best for the team. As you just described in the bicycling metaphor, there may be different types of roads. Somebody's better on a hill. Somebody's
Mm.
better on obstacles. Somebody's better on a sprint. And as you rotate those positions of leader and follower and observer, you can really become a high performant team, not just individual runners or bikers on a trail.
Yes, absolutely. And again, I think that ties back to one of the first questions. What's one of the surprising things that we see about management and leadership is that it's not just one person doing this. This is a village. This is a team working together.
Right. How does that work in places that have some lingering organizational hierarchy beyond the minimum viable? Accountability, how does that manifest itself?
And I think that's usually the tough thing. And I think both you and I have been brought into engagements where you've got the C-level who hires us. I need you to fix my people. And I'm thinking to myself, Oh, and this is when the true Southern version of this expression. Oh, honey, bless your heart. It's not your people. I need to purchase you a mirror,
Yeah.
you know. And so with those types of folks, you can't go in and say that, you know. Of course you can't go in. And so usually when there's a lot of bureaucracy and there's a lot of just legacy inertia, we have to find pockets where we can pilot, where we can play, where we can try things. And I usually try to work with that person high up in that organization who hired us to say, what is an area that has a significant enough impact or effect that if we start working with them, we can start to move a needle, but not something that's going to absolutely shut us down. It's not going to put your business at risk. And so I try to find that middle ground. What's that mid-level opportunity that we can work with? And I want to work with that group for 3 months. And where I'm going to need your help, C-level person, is not just in, oh, you're going to work with it, I'm going to report back to you. But when I quote report back into you, there's things I'm going to need from you. And so I start to pair and partner with that person in a very indirect way of it's not just Steve, you go fix this. It's as you were saying earlier, as a trail guide. All right, here's what I'm seeing on the trail. Here's what I need in order to kind of clear some of that trail away so that the team that's coming through, it's just a little bit less inertia, a little bit less resistance that's there. And so I start to work at what I call multiple levels. I work at that executive level. I work at that what I managerial level, mid-level management. So those line managers up to maybe directors or maybe even AVPs, associate vice presidents. And then, of course, the teams as well, because you need all three of those. It's not just that one is better than the other or one is different on the hierarchy. You each have a role to play in making sure that the organization as a whole is working well. And so we need to work on that. Yeah.
Yeah, we have the gift of coming in as outsiders and can see things differently than people that are deeply immersed, entrenched, swamped by the system, the trails that they're running on. And they have no idea that you could whack some of those branches that keep hitting them and beat back some of the thorns that keep tearing at their shins. There's a wonderful there was a couple of wonderful expressions that come to mind. One of them is Lewin's equation about behavior, that individual or group behavior is a function of both that individual, their experience, and their environment.
Mhm.
And so the thing is to change the environment. And if you have a shitty system, no matter how good of a runner you are or a biker, it's going to beat you down. So I think the greatest leverage, and you touched at it as humans, as coaches, isn't changing the people, not the sponsor, as you described, not going there, or the intermediary people, but to shape the environment so that
Mhm.
it's easier to move through it.
Mhm. Mhm.
What are some of the things that you have seen along the way, specific elements in an environment that have such dramatic influence that they are easy places to start?
So I think there's a couple different things that we need to look at when it comes to the environment. There is a physical medium as well as maybe a cultural medium.
Absolutely.
And I think we need to look at both of those. I have to say, from a physical perspective, I think that's where there's a lot of challenge that's happening right now. Of course, pre-COVID, many folks were in the office 5 days a week. You had a physical place to be. And so the physical environment in and of itself had a huge influence on how well teams worked. I have seen probably the best environments in a physical arrangement have both a common area as well as a cave area. And I think both you and I have used that term before, caves and commons. Have some areas that are open for you to have a conversation, but quite frankly, many of the things that we work on just take a lot of mental stamina and focus. And so it doesn't work well when you have everybody all the time sitting around one common table. And so it's easy to be distracted. And so you need to have a space to go back and I just need to be alone for an hour or two or, or for a day and work on this particular thing. I've seen that is by and far my favorite arrangement is to have that caves and commons area. There was one company that I worked with that I think they took the open office plan a little too far. And at this particular company, don't worry, I'm not going to name names or the industry. But I remember walking in there and it was this large office building and the entire floor was open. The only thing that was like really there was the central elevator shaft and some like kitchen area around the elevator shaft. But the rest of the office was completely open. And they had these long, I mean, beautiful, gorgeous tables, but these long benches that traversed almost the entire office from one end to the other with these long benches. And then what really cracked me up is it was so loud and it was so noisy. What they did is they gave people those noise canceling headsets, like the big heavy kind. And then, like when you go to a restaurant, with like a little table number, hey, you hear my order number 94 or whatever it is, you take that little thing in your table, you place it down, it's got that little, stick with a number on it. Well, they took that and what they did is they gave people red cards and green cards. And so if it was okay for somebody to come up to you, you would put a green card in this little
Thing on the top of your helmet that kept your ears
that
closed.
said, hey, you can come talk to me. Or you put a red card in there, with your headphones on, don't bother me. And the funny thing is that we would get up there on that floor, 90% of the floor was, guess what? Red
Red.
cards.
Yeah. Did that really work? Because I worked in a much smaller environment where we had the same protocol,
hmm
visual indicator,
Uh-huh.
and one of the marketing leads, Frank, if you're listening, bless you, I love to tell this story, would have the red card, and people would still come up and tap him on the shoulder. And they're like, I just need a minute. And he's like, red card, headphones, go away. And they're like, oh, please. So he got frustrated. He got a bag of, I guess it was the Harry Potter jelly beans, and picked out the really nasty ones from Harry Potter, like boogers and vomit and dog shit. And anytime somebody violated the protocol, he just put the bowl up. And they're like, what? He's like, eat one. Oh, this tastes awful. It's like having a pet and training it with aversion therapy. I'm curious, the caves and commons, as hard as it is to do in a physical environment, as we've just described,
Mhm.
you resort to red cards, green cards, and vomit tasting jelly beans. How about in the virtual world where you need to be reactive? What have you seen in terms of practices that teams have tried to implement to create that same ability to collaborate but concentrate when people are distributed or 100% remote?
Yeah. And so I'm still a huge fan of a daily check-in. And I'm not talking about a daily status report. This is what I'm working on. This is what I'm stuck on, because that's a waste of time.
Absolutely.
I am a huge fan of just put on the schedule something, 15, 20 minutes a day where that is just an opportunity where you on camera, and I think that's the important thing here, is on camera, we need to see each other. We need to see each other. And it's only 15, 20 minutes a day. Here's the big challenge of the day, or here's something where I just really need help in this particular area. Here is our board of work. Given everything on this board, what is the thing that has the most risk, or the thing that you really want to work on the most? So it's intended to be a free form discussion of where should we focus today? It's almost like a daily planning session, if you will. Huge, huge fan of that. And I think that managers use that as a place to micromanage and get a status report as
Still, still.
still. And if we were like to go, within the Scrum framework, they call it a daily Scrum. And we used to have guidance back in the day of, having to answer three questions. What did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? Anything blocking you? But those three questions have not been part of the framework since 2017, and even a little bit before that. And there's a reason why those three questions are no longer there. It's because that was a status report and it was a complete waste of time. There's something about the organic conversation. Hey, how are you doing? And getting to see each other for just a short 15, 20 minutes every single day that I think is very important. But I'm also a fan of Slack, of putting out what I would call a 911. Hey, I really need help in this area. Who can help? And having a team working agreement that says, hey, if we put something in the 911 channel or something like that, use your judgment. No, not everything is a 911. And so for folks outside of the US, 911 that's the emergency flag, the emergency signal. I need help right away. That's why you have that channel and you have a working agreement with your group. What makes a reasonable 911 versus something, I'm just going to send a Slack message or a text or an email, and it could wait a couple hours. I'll see you later today. And so whenever we've used that 911 channel, hey, I'd like to hop on a Zoom. Here's the link. You just throw it in Slack. Whoever's available at 1 p.m. Eastern time, we're just going to jump on here.
Yeah, I love it. And that's it goes in both directions. You're willing to ask for help and also answer the 911 bat signal. I'm curious, I want to talk a little bit about your experience back in the day at Disney
Mhm.
and how it helped shape your I'm here in service of others.
Oh, yes.
What was it about that Disney environment, both physical and cultural, that made such a lasting impact for you?
Well, talk about the blend of both. I mean, talk about, there's a clear vision, there is a clear mission, there's a clear outcome. Whenever you work there, it's all about, we call them guests. It's all about the guest experience. It's, especially today, it's expensive. These are, lifetime things that people, hey, it's my dream to go there. And I've had the fortune to work there for multiple years early on in my career. And you've got people looking to have an experience like none other. And in order to really do that, talk about teamwork.
Mm,
Just talk about teamwork. And, I was a trainer there. Actually, I was a trainer on the Haunted Mansion. And so what people don't know is that it takes a rotation of between 8 and 10 people to effectively run that ride. And then when it gets really busy, you need a team of around 12 to 15 people to really run the ride. And when we talk about running the ride, it's not just about getting people getting people out. It's about the entire experience. It starts right there at the entry gate when you walk up and you start standing in line. And how you move the queue, how you keep it moving because people don't want to be standing still. You have to keep it moving and keeps in a better mood. And you prepare the group as they come into getting into the show building. And we've got multiple places, we call them expanding rooms, multiple expanding rooms that are going on. And what you have to realize is we have to move 80 people in 60 seconds.
wow.
That's a lot of people. You have to do it with a smile. Well, in the case of Haunted Mansion, I didn't have to smile. And of course, with my natural complexion, which you can naturally see on this audio podcast, my pasty white complexion just, lit up really nice in the black light.
Hmm.
And so when you're moving 80 people every 60 seconds, you have to do it safely. We are there to tell a story. We have to get them in and get them out safely. And they have to have, again, a wonderful experience. The only way you can do that is if everybody is working together. And I can tell down on the loading belt if somebody's not doing their job outside. I can tell. And once you get all these things working together, you just have to work together. And so that togetherness, in order to achieve a mission and to do it in a way that we are fulfilling those desires and those dreams and those experiences, that just really solidified everything that came after that. And so storytelling, experience, looking at the environment for both verbal and nonverbal cues. Working there also at Disneyland is you've got people from different cultures, different languages, different ways to communicate. And it's not always in English. How to do that. 80 people every 60 seconds. How do you do that? And you do it very efficiently and a very effective. You just learn all these different things that are going and making it work.
There's also the things that you've touched on many times. It's trust and psychological safety
Mhm.
in the team.
Yes.
Trust that they're going to do what needs to be done given emerging situations.
Yeah.
Crying baby, puking, whatever, right?
Everything.
And having the safety to say, I need help,
Yes.
or this is not going according to any of the playbooks. And so when you're in that manager role or leadership role, the ability to catalyze trust is so critical. You write in your book, I think it's like peanut butter and jelly. You can't have trust and respect. Well, there's a third one now, safety, without each other. So maybe it's peanut butter, jelly, and bananas. You share some really fun and head scratching and some mirror moment stories. What are some of the most, I put this in air quotes, creative ways you've seen or you yourself have accidentally torpedoed trust in a team?
Ooh, wow. I think many of the times where it's just been so overwhelming, it's just stopping and pausing and just asking the question or making the statement, especially as a manager is later like, huh, wow, that's interesting. What do you think?
Powerful.
And it's always that realization that you don't know everything. And I'm sorry, if you find that manager that knows everything, run. There is no possible way that one person knows absolutely everything. And it's just that stop and the pause, a recognition that, oh shit, something just effed up beyond all belief. Okay, you acknowledge the F up, you acknowledge the situation. Huh. Whereas one of my friends says, that's quite the pickle. And then you're just like, okay, given where we are, all right, now let's come together. What do you think we should do? What are some options that we have?
Let's flip it around and take it from the non-leader role, follower, observer, or bystander. What are some ways that people can speak up comfortably
Mhm.
if it's not completely safe, but before it gets to DEFCON 1, before it explodes? What are some ways to help the
Mhm.
leader in training, the manager in training?
So there's a couple things that I have found where I've been in that situation where the person superior to me was clearly the person in charge. And so there's a couple things that we could do. What we find is that when I end up in a situation where there's that person who's clearly in charge, it's all about making sure we understand what is driving their behavior and understanding what they need. They just want the problem solved. Just do it. We just want the problem solved. And so we have to find ways to communicate, hey, we have a way to solve the problem. Some of the times, what I've said to those folks who are just those people in charge is something like, well, we've run into something similar where we did this. Can I have your permission to try this? And I really try to use the words that are going to resonate in saying that, okay, that person who's clearly in charge wants to retain power. And so, what's a word or a phrase I can use? Can I have your permission? So it's kind of like that managing up. And so in that situation, I'll just say, hey, can I go ahead and do this? And they're going to probably say yes. Or if I've got the other leaders that, have that empowering psychological safety, I'm going to go back to David Marquet. I had a chance to work with him on a couple little things.
He's wonderful.
What you see is what you get. He is fantastic. And he talks about the intent-based leadership. And again, it's kind of like a bell curve. We want to get to a point where it's healthy for us to say, I intend to do this, and this is the reason why I think it's a good idea. And then in that short pause, if you don't hear, oh, but what about this, or you don't hear the resistance, you go ahead and do it. And so you state your intentions, you state why. Okay, we're moving on. Or if the answer is like, oh, hey, wait a second, have you thought about this? That may not be a good idea. You can have that conversation.
Yeah, his approach is really wonderful. Unfortunately, I haven't seen it played out. Oftentimes, empowerment and accountability is a bit of a charade. And you have some examples in your book where this goes wrong. It's like, here's some responsibility. Good luck. Don't screw it up. Are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? What are some of the other creative micromanagement techniques that you've encountered when leaders are trying to empower, yet they have gritted teeth?
And again, it kind of gets down to what is the level of directness I can have with this person. And so, Andy, I think you know me well enough that well, sometimes I'll just say it. And I'll just, say it with my smile. I think I heard from you. Sometimes I might have a velvet 2x4. And depending again on the person and the situation and the degree of risk and impact, if things have high risk, high impact, I'm going to say it. If somebody's going to really truly hurt themselves, hurt somebody else, hurt the company irreparably, I'm going to be a little bit more direct. But if the stakes are not that high, this is not life and death, I don't need to do that. And so again, it takes, I think, that emotional awareness of what is truly the direness of the situation. Not everything is dire, I'm sorry to say. Just recognizing that level of necessity to be that direct, it's going to be variable. Some people you can be that direct with depending on the situation, some people you can't. And so on the other end of the spectrum, sometimes what I'll do is I will play the role of, you're the mentor, my superior. You are the one with the experience. I'm just humbly working for you. Okay, maybe that might be a little too far. But
Take two.
might be a little too far. But what we can do again with some level of authenticity, I'm like, you've been here, you've done that, you've been doing this, let's say for 10 years, 15, 20 years. How have you seen this play out? Like, how can I want to learn from you? But you have to ask that question with authenticity. It can't just be a BS question. Oh, yeah, why don't you just tell me what to do? You can't do it that way. You have to go in there with that curiosity, putting your own humility to the side for the second and just say, what can I learn from this? What can I learn in this moment? Whether it's the actual solution and or how to work with this person on solving that particular issue. Because again, when you come down to it, when you've got that person in that superior position, they just want to, if I might, GSD, get stuff done, or what I like to say, get shit done. They just need to get shit done. All right. How do we best do that?
You introduced the concept of guardrails, bowling bumpers that are, situationally appropriate. And I like that because I think that works for both directions. What are the hard and soft constraints? What happens if I bump it, if I jump it? It's enabling constraints. It's setting boundaries that so often doesn't happen, where confusion instills. And why'd you do that? I thought that's what you wanted.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people take a look at, what is my decision authority? Well, I can make a decision on my own up to $20,000. Okay, well, what if the bill is $21,000? Well, you need my approval. I'm like, really? How about a conversation?
Wouldn't that be sweet?
And that's the concept of a guardrail. A guardrail is like, okay, if we start getting into this area, it's not going to be a no. What it is you are a professional, you are an adult. My expectation is for us to have a conversation. If you need more than $20,000, come to me. You know what? Let's talk through it. And let's kind of say, okay, what is it about this that is really working well for you? What might be some of the risks of this? I know you've looked at other options. Is there anything relevant that you want to share with me? Honestly, as your manager, I don't care to know that you've looked at 18 different things. I really don't. I really don't.
There's the assumption that as my manager, you have some perspective experience that I may not have. And coming back to Marquet's approach, I intend to spend the $21,000. I acknowledge it is a little bit over the budget. However, I'm offsetting it here, blah, blah, blah. And then the powerful question, what might I be missing?
Yeah.
We have a corporate purchasing agreement with that. Actually, you can get it at a 20% discount. Great, you're under budget. Good job.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You need that extra 5,000 because there is that discount there. Yeah, it's just again, it's the guardrails is not just a hard no. It's that invitation, and here's the key, invitation to a conversation.
Right. Wow, time has flown by. We're coming up on our time box. I'd love to do a quick flyby, and maybe we schedule something else down the road this year about learning organizations.
Mhm.
And there's this myth that learning happens in a scheduled training session that usually involves bad coffee and bad PowerPoint. But in your book, you talk about learning being baked into everybody's daily work. How do we help organizations make that shift?
Yeah. So again, this is one of those things that when it comes to working in especially today's economic environment, the companies that stay stagnant will go out of business, plain and simple. And they're going out of business and they're being struggling faster and faster and faster. We have to change. We have to change with the times. And if we don't learn as we go along and we just do what we've always done, we won't be here. Plain and simple, full stop. And so, what we need to do is work with our organizations, with our teams in setting up our goals for the year. These are the outcomes I'm looking for, such as I'm looking to increase productivity by 10%. I'm looking to increase customer satisfaction by 15%. Have those goals, break those down into like, okay, what can we do this quarter? What can we do next quarter? And really have those feedback loops maybe once a month or once every other week. I don't care, whatever makes sense for you. Are we still reaching those goals? Are these goals still reasonable? Are these goals still pertinent? Are they are still important? They still apply given where we are. And so having those feedback loops in there are just so incredibly important just for, quite frankly, mere survival. That takes learning. That takes trying things that are going to work, things that are not going to work. I want to see a mix of swings for the fences,
Hmm,
along with certain things that are, you know what? Let me just try this one little increment to see if I can get it just a little bit better. And what I try to encourage anybody that works with me, for me, is that a good experiment has a 50-50 chance of success and or failure.
a good one. Too many experiments are planned to be slam dunks in which you learn nothing.
If you're 90% confident that it's going to work, that's not an experiment.
Right.
That's just a confirmation of, edge cases and bias. And so I want an experiment. Now, do we want everything to be swing for the fences? No, because that's a lot of risk as well. And so it's finding the balance between what is a swing for the fence? What are those, midfield things? What are those things that we're just going to do it just to get, maybe on one base, those types of things.
Nice. Well, I can see the finish line approaching. Before we talk about where folks can find you and get the book, is there anything else we missed that we should have covered in this conversation?
Well, I think maybe just as a quick summary of everything here is it's not just management, it's not just leadership. I think you need a mix of both. I think you need just enough of that management in there of what we need to do, And we can do that by establishing some working agreements with our teams. We didn't talk a lot about that here today, but there's some great team canvases on there. There's some great references out there on team working agreements. And again, I think if you can work with your teams on what those guardrails are as part of those team working agreements, it just really sets a baseline for everybody. This is how we're going to operate. This is the leadership that we need in the how we're going to operate.
Sweet. Besides joining you out on some running trails, where can people find you and connect with you, Steve Martin?
So you can take a look at my website. I'm Doc Steve Martin, DOC, Steve Martin, like the actor. So if you go to docstevemartin.com, that'll bring you to my website. I've got a bunch of free stuff up there, lots of videos, lots of white papers. You can get a link to my book. You can see where all my trainings are. You can see where I'm going to do any of my keynotes that are coming up. That is like the one-stop shop. You can get to see everything.
Awesome. Well, listeners, see the show notes for all those links. And also, you can grab the print or Kindle version of Steve's latest book, Bad Shit Managers Do. You know, I noticed the subtitle, Steve. Down there in small print, it says Volume 1. That implies there might be something else coming. Did the page count limit you, or do you have new topics? Tell us more.
I had to make a decision. Do I want to do a Harry Potter-esque 600-page tome, or do I want to start getting some stuff out there? So it turns out I did a lot of bad shit as a manager. And I'm like, wow, this could be really overwhelming for somebody. So I decided to, in a very agile way, release in small chunks, small increments. Volume 1 is all about the mindset, management versus leadership. It's really about you and your view. Volume 2 is trending to be, well, how do you lead a team? And then volume 3 is trending to be, well, how do you lead up? How do you lead across? And so I've made mistakes in all 3 levels.
The voice of experience, bless your heart.
Oh, that voice. Bless
Yeah,
my heart.
thanks again, Steve, and to our listening audience. If you enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Steve Martin, grab a copy of his book in print or Kindle, Bad Shit Managers Do, How to Lead Instead. See the show notes for a link. Also, please give us a review or rating on your podcast platform of choice. It really does help the ecosystem bubble us up. If you'd like to join the discussion, share some of your own stories about the management potholes you've dodged, how you've helped create environments where people actually want to come to work, join our Discord server. And remember, like good running, good leadership is something that you need to practice every day. So until next time, this is the Agile Uprising Podcast, signing out.